on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, 3 boat arrivals in a week. Daniel Wild with the latest on local and international politics. I'll cross to Israel to speak to Emily Schrader about the reaction to Australia's shock UN vote. And joining me tonight is the always insightful Yank, Army Horowitz, and making his Sky News debut is popular Australian comic, the dangerously heteronormative, un-PC, toxic white male Isaac Butterfield. But first, the Albanese government plans to spend a whopping extra $24 billion over the next 4 years, including a generous $300 in power bill discounts for every household from Toorak to Tooradin and $325 for small businesses. A move that the Treasury says will reduce inflation by 0.5% next year. This looks very much like an election budget, and there are certainly winners and losers, with fears the short-term boosts lack long-term benefits. Let's bring in Daniel Wild from the Institute of Public Affairs. Daniel, your verdict on the budget, and how exactly are we fighting inflation by injecting billions and billions of taxpayer money into the economy?
Well, that's right. This is a bad budget. It lacks vision and ambition for the future of Australia. Basically, the entire debate has been about whether we means test or don't means test a $300 subsidy. We're facing much bigger economic problems. What this also reinforces, Rita, is that this is a redistributionist government. It's not a growth government. It is a government that is focused on its narrow sectional interests, not on the betterment of the nation as a whole. In terms of the lack of ambition, their own forecasts have real GDP growth in the twos for the next 5 years. Contrast that to the Hawke era, where it was 3.5% growth every single year. So this government has given up on the idea of economic growth, and they're reverting to 1970s-style politics.
The Prime Minister has hit back at the critics who are calling the energy rebates wasteful and untargeted.
We are providing in this budget tax cuts for every single Australian taxpayer, but also energy bill relief for every household. It's the most efficient way for it to be delivered.
Now, there's a lot being said about this energy bill relief and who should be entitled to it, but I think, again, we're missing the point. We wouldn't need energy bill relief if we weren't pushing up the cost of energy deliberately. These are policies that have led to this. It hasn't happened because we've run out of gas and oil and coal.
Well, that's right. It's the tail wagging the dog. It's treating symptoms, not causes. And the cause of the energy bill increases is net zero and the decommissioning of coal-fired power. I mean, we know this from the data. We can go back to 2007 when Kevin Rudd came in, all of the subsidies came in. Since 2007, energy bills have gone up by 9% per year on average. If you contrast that from 1990 to 2007, it was just 3% per year. So they've gone up at triple the rate as a result of whether it's the carbon tax or the subsidies or net zero. So you have to treat the underlying problem rather than putting a Band-Aid on it.
Staying on the budgets, let's shed some light on some of the hidden winners and losers, with cash splashed on everything from plant-based proteins to symphony orchestras. The government is going to be spending $1.5 million of your money to make it easier to understand labelling on food items such as veggie burgers and tofu sausages, $3 million on seafood origin stickers, plus $216 million will be spent on arts and culture, including $5.2 million for orchestras in Canberra and Darwin. Dan, does Canberra need any more orchestras, and why can't they pay for it themselves?
Well, they don't need more orchestras for sure, but they're getting a lot more public servants in the budget, tens of thousands of more public servants with pay rises. Look, there's another 3 key winners out of the budget. There's the environmental activists with the EPA. They're getting more money to shut down the economy. Those who want to censor, the E-Safety Commission, they get more money to shut down freedom of speech. And of course, everybody's favourite billionaire, Twiggy Forrest, is getting even more money from the government to...
He needs the money, though.
He needs the money to
he needs all that money.
Unproven technologies that we're all going to pay for.
How do they justify something like that? How do they justify giving one of Australia's richest individuals this sort of assistance?
Well, I mean, their argument is it's all to do with the new green, renewable superpower. Look, I think Australians will see through this, and it doesn't make sense. When you're talking about people doing it tough with the cost of living, then you've got policies that are giving tax credits to someone like Twiggy Forrest. It just doesn't add up.
It does not. And budget week is hectic in Canberra, but not so hectic that Labor MPs can't find time to do stupid TikTok videos. Dan, I don't even want to ask you about that clip. They just got to stop doing stuff like that. Just stop with the TikTok, Instagram videos. They don't work. They're cringeworthy. Thank you. Now, will the Albanese government's weakness on borders see a return of boats and the people smuggling trade? In the past week, 3 boats have been picked up. 6 boats in the past 6 months have made it all the way to Australia. Senator James Paterson, the Shadow Home Affairs Minister, is blaming the policies of the Albanese government.
Under the Labor government, aerial monitoring and on-sea surveillance are down by 20% and 12% respectively. So it's no wonder that boats are slipping through, and it's a result of this government being weak when it comes to Operation Sovereign Borders. They have undermined Operation Sovereign Borders at every opportunity, including abolishing temporary protection visas, reducing these flying hours, and planning to cut over $400 million out of the budget over the next 3 years.
I don't think it's a coincidence that every time Labor is in power, this becomes an issue.
No, that's right. James Paterson's spot on. Look, there's a couple of things here. There's a big chunk of the Labor Party that just does not believe in sovereign borders. They're open borders people. They don't believe in turning boats back. They never have. They never will. The other issue here is, look, it gets to the bigger problem of the entire migration system, not just the illegal arrivals, but the actual program. The budget confirms that the majority of our economic growth is still going to be underpinned by this unplanned mass migration that's sending us backwards in terms of a per capita situation. So Australians are getting poorer because of Labor's mass migration program, and we're also less secure because of their soft borders approach.
Now, a statue of former Tasmanian Premier William Crowther has been vandalised a day before a court ruling about whether it should be taken down. The statue in Hobart's Franklin Square was badly damaged with its legs cut halfway through. And this statue is not just in danger from the criminal vandals, but also the vandals in the Hobart City Council who also want to topple it.
Well, exactly. And we've seen this before with, statues of Captain Cook and others where, these people just don't know Australian history. They're taught that Australia is a bad country, that we're not worth defending, that our culture is not worth preserving. And so no wonder they act like this. These are the downstream consequences of a broken education system. And of our main institutions of our society, whether it's going to the football or anything else, where we're continually taught Australia is based on stolen land and that we're not a good country. Well, this is what happens.
This is, and this whole controversy is over Crowther, who was a surgeon who was noted for his work with the poor. But there were allegations back in 1869 that he found and stole the skull of an Aboriginal corpse. He denied it completely, but because of those allegations in 1869, they want to topple his statue. Now, to this report from the ABC, and this is an important story about Chinese police being allowed to come to Australia with permission from the Australian Federal Police and question a woman and then take her back to China for trial in what is seen as a major breach of Chinese-Australian police protocols. She was targeted as part of an anti-corruption program called Operation Fox Hunt. Now, Dan, the Chinese Communist Party says Fox Hunt is all about targeting people who have committed serious financial crimes, but there are human rights groups who say this is a way to silence dissidents and critics of the regime.
Look, I don't know the details of this particular case, but on the face of it, it's concerning. China, as we know, is not a country with the rule of law. It doesn't have transparency or the legal safeguards. So even if the accusations are correct about financial wrongdoing and serious crimes, I don't think anyone could have confidence that they were going to be dealt with in an appropriate manner. So, look, on the face of it, I don't think that this should be happening of Australian residents being taken to China. We don't know what's going to happen to them.
Well, yeah, I'm just shocked because we've got Australians in Chinese prisons and we know how they're treated, and the fact that once you're charged, you've got something like a 99.9% conviction rate, and the methods they use are also something to worry about. Now, let's talk about this painting of King Charles III. He's unveiled the official portrait. This is the first one since the coronation. And you can see His Majesty is wearing the uniform of the Welsh Guards in a striking oil painting, striking indeed. This portrait was commissioned all the way back in 2020 when King Charles was still a prince. It's divided opinion, but I've got to say, Dan, I absolutely love it. I got a shock initially, but the more I look at it, the more I think it's a really special piece of art. Well, what's your take on it? Are you a hater?
I'm not a hater, but when I first saw it, I got to say I didn't quite get it. It's a bit too avant-garde for my taste. Maybe it'll grow on me over time. But look, I think it is good to see the King back in official duties. We know he was very unwell for a period of time, so it's good to see that. Now, look, maybe it will grow on me, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Okay, well, we're not going to have a big fight over it, but I think just keep looking at it, and you will see the deep beauty within. Daniel Wild, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Joining me now is filmmaker and journalist Ami Horowitz. Ami, President Joe Biden is notorious for repeating lies, verifiable lies, over and over again. And the latest example is the claim that inflation was at 9% when he took office.
I think inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in, and it's now down around 3%. And bringing down inflation was 9% when I came to office. 9%.
Inflation was actually 1.4% when Biden was sworn in.
Ami, why does he keep doing these? I mean, these are things you can check. They're not just matters of opinion.
No, it's, well, he was right in the sense that it was 9% a year after he came into office. No, on the inflation issue itself, he's made many, many lies. For example, that inflation was because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when a simple math equation shows you the majority of the inflation actually came prior to the invasion of Ukraine. I mean, we can go on and on. We could talk about how his uncle was eaten by cannibals. Yes, that was something he actually claimed to be a fact. We could talk about he's arrested in Delaware for civil rights violations. And frankly, the worst of all, when he continuously says that his son was killed in Afghanistan, when his son actually tragically died of cancer afterwards. But despicably, he loves to trot that out when he's talking to families who lost kids in wars. He continues to trot out that particular lie, particularly despicable and terrible. No, but of course, he's never going to be called on it because he's parroting what the mainstream media wants to hear. This one is, again, the issue is the verifiability. If you're going to lie, Joe, lie is something that can't be checked. That would be my suggestion to you, a little gift for you. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
It's just incredible. Like, yeah, inflation was once 9%, but during your term, when you inherited office, the inflation was almost at rock bottom. So it's just such a bold-faced lie. US Vice President Kamala Harris, though, she's not doing much better. She's expressing her appreciation for young activists during a recent interview, praising their approach and how they aren't waiting around for the older generation to solve big issues. She highlighted things like their readiness to tackle policies on gun violence and climate change. But, Ami, these are strange comments to be making at a time when college campuses are overrun by these young activists disgracing themselves and disgracing these institutions of higher learning.
Yeah, I also, if you recall, I also recently took a tour around a campus with my American flag, and 15 of these great youth people she's referring to attacked me viciously and grabbed my flag. I think she needs to take a look around. Is she praising the people who who attacked me. She's praising the people who won't allow Jews to go to class on campus. Yeah, she needs to be clear about what she's referring to. And by the way, I think she also needs to take a look at the poll numbers, because the 18 to 29 vote, which overwhelmingly went for Biden and Kamala Harris last election, seems to be eroding significantly, because even them, even the 18 and 29, and by the way, if you know anybody who's under 29, they don't know anything, right? But even those people are smart enough to realize that this country is being driven into the ground, and the responsibility lies directly with this administration, which, by the way, happens to include Kamala Harris. So, yeah, I think she needs to recheck her little tour of the campuses, and maybe she'll recant it. I don't know. I doubt it.
Well, a law school in Boston is facing a backlash after graduates smeared red paint on their hands and held them up during their commencement ceremonies. Pro-Palestinian students used this symbol of bloody hands to protest the death toll in Gaza. Army, you know perfectly well what this means. Tell my audience what those red hands symbolise. What event are these graduates glorifying?
Yeah, so there was a lynching in Ramallah a number of years ago where a Jew was murdered and ripped apart by Palestinian animals. And one particular thug, animal beast, took his bloody hands and he put them out the window famously and photographed it. I assume you're referring to that. That is the most disgusting display of savagery that I could imagine. But I think that these students need to pay attention a little more to the news. We've been saying this for a while, but even the United Nations has recanted and finally said, okay, we were lying for a long time about this war in Gaza, and they finally came to terms and reduced the number of civilian casualties by 50%, Rita. We all knew those numbers were lies, but everybody kept saying, well, look what the mainstream media is saying. The UN is saying it. And now finally, after the damage has been done to Israel's reputation, they finally came out and said, oh, we got it wrong. Actually, the Israeli numbers were right. And shockingly, Hamas numbers are wrong. Maybe those idiots on that campus, that graduation, to look at the fact that Israel has fought a war historically low civilian casualties, two civilians for every one militant, as opposed to, and by the way, and that's when you have the most densely populated place on planet Earth, where Hamas is hiding civilians, using civilians as shields for themselves. And if you compare that to the NATO numbers of Afghanistan, well, the numbers were 5-1. Maybe those people should look at those numbers and maybe rethink their idiocy on graduation day.
Now let's talk about Snopes. Snopes, the so-called fact-checking site, has been embarrassed again, having to correct a fact-check about Ashley Biden, the daughter of US President Joe Biden, her diary. The disturbing claims in that diary are now listed as true, not unproven. Army, if this was Ivanka's diary detailing inappropriate showers with her dad and all sorts of other allegations, we'd never stop hearing about it. This would be well known across the board, but the contents of this diary have been memory hold. So many in the media have declined to report anything about it.
Yeah, the big issue here really is the fact checkers themselves, and Snopes and PolitiFact and USA Today and the like. I think one of the great accomplishments of the left was their ability to take over that entire industry and then brand it as unbiased, right? Above the political fray. And people have taken that and frankly done a great job of branding, because regular people look at these organizations, Wikipedia and Snopes and PolitiFact and so forth, as fact. And the reality is so far from that. I can tell you personally, I have had, with all of those fact-checking organizations, I have run into issues with them where they have lied baldly about things that I have said. I have forced several of them to recant. But of course, once it's released, the damage is done. And you know when they're lying, when all their mistakes are all in favor of liberals and none of the mistakes are in favor of conservatives. That really is the answer how they're lying. If it was even half-half, I could see how could they look. They make mistakes. But no, what the reality is that what they are, they look at what they want things to be and assume that must be actual fact. Right? They basically have weaponized their bias. And again, it's been a very, very successful branding exercise, and they've sold to the public as you can look at us as unbiased when it couldn't be further from the truth.
Absolutely, and it's so dangerous because it is gaslighting on a mass scale, calling themselves fact checkers when they're often amongst the most biased activists in the industry. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Always a pleasure.
Still to come, a massive edition of Lefties Losing It, and I'll be joined by possibly Australia's most popular comic. He's got more than 2 million followers on YouTube alone. You're watching The Rita Panahi Show, and now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And I think we're ready to hear more pronouns and expressions of gender identity. Are you homo-flexible? Perhaps you're pan or trixic? No, I don't know what any of these words mean either.
Hi, my name's Queenie and my pronouns are they, them. When I post about my gender identity and my sexuality, when I say that I don't want any labels, that is not an invitation for you to speculate on who I am or what I am. It's not a guessing game for you to play over whether I'm a girl or a boy, about what's in my pants, or if I'm pan, or bi, or trixic, or homo-flexible, or grey romantic, or anything else. You don't need to fully understand the nuances of gender identity or sexuality to know that each person knows who they are better than you ever will.
Yes, there are new identities and pronouns popping up every hour, it seems, but how many things can you identify as at the same time? See if you can beat this millennial list.
I am a white, transmasculine, femme, non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, culturally Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, grey demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex trauma, millennial, and cat parent in mental health recovery.
Demi-low romantic, chronically ill Unitarian Universalist, transmasculine, I've lost track already. Let's hear now from a lefty who's been losing it for some time now. One-time Oscar nominee when she was known as Ellen Page, star of the hit film Juno. But she has since transitioned to Elliot Page, an enthusiastic trans activist who claims that being LGBTQIA++ is not niche.
Often called like niche, queer things niche. 30% of young people identify as LGBTQ+. So I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not niche. You tell really specific stories about like cis het people. I'm not calling that odd plot niche. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure I read a good book about that by Abigail Schreier, Irreversible Damage, the Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. But Paige is right. There are a lot of young people identifying as anything other than just an ordinary girl or boy. I mean, who wants to be ordinary? I'm reminded of this classic clip from a Washington, D.C. Pride rally in 22 where journalist Savannah Hernandez asked people how they identify.
I am genderqueer, transmasc, and queer.
What's transmasc?
Transmasc is like people under the non-binary umbrella identifying like or presenting masc.
Masculine?
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm trans and my sexuality is unlabeled. I use he, him pronouns.
Yeah, and I use he, they pronouns.
Tell us what you guys identify as. We're asking everyone here today.
Gay. Gay, cis, what is it? Cisgender male. There we go.
I don't know. Gender neutral or gender fluid. I think that's what they said. I don't know. I'm confused.
We're all confused, lady. Let's see if there is any more clarity with some others at the rally.
He, she, her, they.
She. Pronouns are he, him, sometimes use they. I don't give a I guess you could call me gay. I'm homo-flexible, really. I do like some women, but mostly men.
She, her, it. I feel like, honestly, it should not be a bad thing. Like, I've talked to people who go with they and them. I'm like, well, in the grammar of things, how would you want to represent yourself? I was like, I mean, I guess it, because it's like, you're it. You're the it.
I'd be careful before referring to people as it. Not everyone is going to appreciate it. But that was Washington, D.C. It's a strange place. Only 4% voted for Trump. Surely we wouldn't have that sort of confusion in Texas.
They, she. They, he, non-binary, trans, masc.
Bisexual. I'm just trans.
I'm a gay male pup.
Yeah.
Gay male pup?
Yeah.
Transgender, he, him.
I'm cis, she, her.
Probably non-binary, yeah, would be the best.
What about you?
Bi. A lesbian. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I like frogs, not people. I'm sorry? I like frogs, not people.
I like frogs too. Now to Democrat stalwart and strategist James Carville losing it over Trump increasing his lead in the latest polls, particularly in those crucial swing states.
And Trump's more ahead than he's ever been. It's going the wrong way. It's not working. Everything that we're throwing is spaghetti at a wall, and none of it is sticking, me included. And it's hard when you're starting your 80th year, and you know, like anybody else, I have an opinion of myself, and the opinion I've come to is I don't matter. And you know, we gotta try to think of something different, because what we're doing is really, really not working.
I don't know. How about trying to formulate policies that don't destroy the country? That could be an idea. How about not becoming some sad copy of a banana republic where the ruling party tries to jail their main political rival? How about not being lefties losing it on a daily basis? That might see a bump in Biden's numbers, because, you know, things are pretty grim when even CNN can't hide the truth anymore.
Look, these Sunbelt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with.
Yes, the Joe Biden team can work with that, but why is Trump doing so well in those Sunbelt states like Nevada, Georgia and Arizona? You're going to love this answer from CNN. The CNN audience probably didn't like it, but you will.
When you're looking into the numbers, why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sunbelt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaigns, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition, it was 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%. So the Trump coalition is becoming more diverse. And, of course, those Sunbelt battleground states are more diverse than the Great Lake battleground states.
You're looking at the Nevadas and the Arizonas here.
Of course. If you look at Nevada, Arizona, heavy Hispanic population, Georgia, heavily African-American population. Michigan does have some black voters in it, but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily white.
Yes, Trump's non-white vote has jumped around 50%, and the whiter the state, the better Joe Biden is doing. Doesn't that smash the media's tired old narratives? Now to North Carolina, where some lefty students lost it at Duke University's commencement ceremony on Sunday because the guest speaker was Jerry Seinfeld, who has the audacity to be white, male, heterosexual, and even worse, he is a Jew who supports Israel. The lefties couldn't handle that, and some of them got up and walked off as the crowd booed.
So what's the big deal about commencement speaker?
I'm pretty sure the crowd were booing all those lefties who were walking off. But I do wonder what Jerry Seinfeld could have said that would be so objectionable that you couldn't possibly stomach it. You had to get up and walk off and miss a massive milestone in your academic career. This is possibly the most controversial parts of the speech I'm about to play you, and a trigger warning for the crazy people.
Privilege is a word that has taken quite a beating lately. Privilege today seems to be the worst thing you can have. I would like to take a moment to defend it. Again, a lot of you are thinking, I can't believe they invited this guy. Too late. I say, use your privilege. I grew up a Jewish boy from New York. That is a privilege if you want to be a comedian. My point is we're embarrassed about things we should be proud of and proud of things we should be embarrassed about. So on my staff in the 90s, we had a lot of Harvard guys. They were fantastic, but I could never understand why these guys were so embarrassed about being from Harvard. They would never talk about it. They would never mention it. I'm not talking about Harvard now. I'm talking about the way it used to be. You're never going to believe this. Harvard used to be a great place to go to school.
Joined now by comedian Isaac Butterfield, who has kicked off his 2024 World Tour in Australia. In 2 days, he'll be at the Capitol Theatre in Bendigo. You can grab your tickets now, but be quick because he sells out very quickly indeed. He's not only funny, but he is one of the best at handling hecklers.
1 year to the day since I did my last show. Shut your mouth, woman. I remember you. How do I remember you? Where do I know you from? Kim. I remember we had quite a weird interaction. You made an absolute yourself. Everyone in the room hated you. You left. We thought you perished. We celebrated, and yet your return has come.
Hey, Isaac Butterfield, welcome to the program. Your crowd work is very good. It's very important these days for stand-up, isn't it, the crowd work?
It certainly is. It gets this new audience in that have never seen stand-up before. And that right there, that poor woman, she's been to a lot of
You were so mean to her. She wasn't even a heckler.
I am one of the worst people alive. I'll tell you that right now, Rita. But it's fun. It's a good time to get involved with the crowd. And they come along, and it's funny, you know, the people who sit in the front rows, they pay the most for the tickets, and they're the most interested, and they're the first to buy. And then I go out there and I'm like that, horrible and mean. And it's just part of it. It's what keeps it fun and new for me. Because I go out every night and I do similar material and I'm working on new bits and preparing for a special. But to go out there and find someone to ruin their day, that's what makes it fun.
They love it. They all want to be part of those viral clips. They love it. Now, you've not only got a world tour, but you've got a book, which I'm very interested in, because the title alone, Better Man, a manifesto on modern masculinity. Now, that's going to trigger people right then and there.
Immediately.
Are you our Jordan Peterson?
Maybe a horrifically bogan version of Jordan Peterson. No, not at all. I didn't want to write, I didn't want to write something that was trying to make me look like I was writing a biography. I'm only 30. I know it looks like I'm a bit older. There's a harsh wind where I live. Nonetheless, it's important for younger people to understand that, particularly when they come from 16 years old to a little bit older, that those years, the formative years, they're going to encounter a lot of different problems, issues, and different ideas. And this book isn't so much this, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is a far-right comedian saying this. Not at all. In fact, a lot of the opinions you probably see in this book are very much in the middle. There's the first chapter is all about mental health. There's a chapter in the middle about marrying your best friend, which I did with my wife, and we get along like a house on fire and have done for 10 years. There's a chapter about my son when he was born and what, you go through mentally to prepare for that.
Yeah.
And there's also me being a horrible person in there as well. Don't worry about that. But it's important, I think, for young dudes to not just hear these things on the building site or in the footy club or wherever they happen to be, wherever they get their information from, to receive it from someone who's gone out and done all these shows and travelled the world and met these people and done these things.
And still young and relatable, because you appeal to that demographic very strongly. I've got a 17-year-old son, so I know that. Do you think there is a crisis in masculinity in not just Australia but the West? We have boys growing up just hearing negative messages, the toxic masculinity, they're going to be this, they're going to be that. And I do wonder what impact that has on their psyche as they grow into young men.
There's definitely horrible men, but to say that masculinity is inherently toxic is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You would never say that about mean women being toxic feminine people.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around and they don't see the damage that it does. Like, dudes can deal with it, older men can deal with it, but we are seeing a distinct line in the sand at younger people's preschools, wherever they happen to be, or kindergartens. It's the boys versus the girls. These boys are going to grow up to be these horrible people, and it's just not the case.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that creates an enemy between these two genders, one of the many, or two of the many genders. And
there are so many genders.
There are so many genders.
Well, let's have a look at some of that, because let's do some lefties together. It feels strange and weird, because it's something I do by myself. It's a solo thing. But let's start with the Veep, Kamala Harris. She started swearing.
We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language.
Oh, she's just comedic gold. She gives so much material, but the left in general do, and yet comics are so shy about using that rich material.
Yeah.
Why is that? I know a lot of comics lean left themselves, but when the left are giving you this craziness, surely it's, if you're interested in being funny, you're going to utilise it.
Yeah, being a left-wing comedian is a smart business decision, because you're going to end up on, you know, the Channel 10s or wherever you want to be.
Yeah.
You're going to be on the Melbourne Comedy Festival roadshow. You're going to be on these big platforms, and they're going to push you because you play
Netflix specials that are awful.
There are some very good ones. There's some very bad ones as well. And but also, we know that comedy is subjective. We know that people don't want to come and see, if they're an older person perhaps, or they are left-wing themselves, they probably don't want to come and see me, and that's fine. Some people just aren't good people. They aren't funny people. But other people do enjoy that. And I think if there's a nice mix, then it's fine. But if you walk through Melbourne right now, or you go to the comedy clubs, I would be absolutely shunned. They would not want me.
Which is crazy, because you have such an enormous following. You've got more than 2 million followers on YouTube alone. I know you've got massive followings on other social media sites, but I looked that up and I checked some really high-profile Aussie comics. I couldn't find a single one that came close to your following. Jim Jeffries has got 300,000. I mean, he had his own show in the US, so, you know, he had really high profile. But so there is obviously a market for your type of comedy. It's just the comedy world seems to be dominated by leftist types. Now, I want to play you a couple of clips involving pronouns, and this one has a pronoun threat, which I enjoyed.
Oh, good.
Hi there. You can either respect my trans homies, or I can identify as a f***ing problem. And if I catch your as being disrespectful, your pronouns are going to be was, were. Thank you for coming, and have a nice day.
Oh, I'm not sure if death threats are a way to have folks embrace your neopronouns.
That's actually my wife. Interesting.
She's let herself go a little bit.
No, she likes to dress up. It's interesting, and this is the thing with TikTok, is you're seeing some of the most insane people of all time having a platform to reach so many different
millions.
People. These people, 100 years ago would be on the streets, people would walk past them and tiptoe around them and all that type of stuff. But now they have a platform to the masses, and we're seeing it right there.
We are, and we do not embrace any sort of acts of violence on this program, except if it's delivered by a cat.
Hi, my name is Erin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am
That is one of the all-time great clips ever. I mean, you know, you can say what you want about social media, but that 8 seconds of 24-karat gold there makes it all worth it.
I've never been a fan of cats, but that's good. That's positive. We're starting to make a bit of headway with cats.
Oh, I do love it. Now, another thing I don't understand with comics these days, because a lot of them seem to be looking for applause, saying, you know, a woke little
Political
pronouncement. Yes, yeah, but not funny. Funny doesn't seem to be the priority anymore. And I hear a lot of comics talk about, well, we don't want to punch down, this punching down concept. But you look at who's powerful, all the big institutions, whether you're talking about Hollywood studios, sporting leagues, celebrities, corporates, they're all woke. So surely if you are taking those on, you're punching up.
Yeah, I think in comedy, it is all about, in my personal opinion, I throw punches wherever they'll land. I'll king hit. It doesn't matter, whatever's going on, all right? People are coming and they're paying money to laugh, for an hour to forget about their lives, whether they're good lives, bad lives, or indifferent. And if you don't give that to them, if they don't spend their entire time belly laughing, their abs walking out, hurting, then you haven't done your job.
Yeah. That's I don't care if you're offensive, even if you're offensive about things that I care about, as long as it's funny. If you're offensive without the laugh, then we have a problem.
Well, I got told, basically last year I got cancelled for an Aboriginal joke. Now, I have been doing Aboriginal jokes since I started doing comedy because I grew up playing rugby league with a lot of Aboriginal fellas. And this is just how we use banter, I guess you would say. Now, I eventually got taken to the Human Rights Commission in Queensland because of that joke. And it's still before the courts, and it's a whole thing that's happened. I got served papers because of a joke. One lady complained, and then I had to front the commission.
Wow.
So this is where this is going. Like, I know a lot of people say, oh, you know, there's no such thing as cancel culture. That's cancel culture right there. That's real.
Yeah.
That's venues not booking you because they don't want to deal with the backlash because you're getting taken to a government organisation.
Well, the process is part of the punishment when it comes to the Human Rights Commission. I don't know about your case. I've got to confess I don't know the details of that one, but I know about other cases where that's very much the dynamic. Isaac Butterfield, thank you so much for your time this evening. Still to come, President Joe Biden backtracks on his commitments to Israel. The Albanese government, meanwhile, is accused of supporting terrorism. Welcome back. The White House is set to scale back its support of Israel and its war against Hamas. The Biden administration's decision to pause a shipment of arms marked a significant turning point, which could have a lasting impact on the administration's relationship with Israel. Joining me now is TV host and journalist Emily Schrader. Emily, there are deep divisions in the Democrat Party over President Biden's response to this conflict. Do Israelis still feel that the US has their back, that they've got them alongside them as they fight to eliminate Hamas?
Well, first of all, Rita, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to be here. In regard to what's going on in the United States and do Israelis actually feel that America has their back, I think the vast majority of Israelis feel that the American people have their back. But when it comes to the Biden administration, I think we've seen a sharp turn, and a turn that, quite frankly, is not surprising given this U.S. administration's foreign policy from day one on other states as well, be it Russia, China, or the Islamic Republic of Iran. There's been a very, very weak foreign policy from the Biden administration. And I'm not surprised at all to see that he's sort of kowtowing to the more extremist elements within the Democratic Party. Now, this is despite the fact, of course, that it's probably going to lose him the election. So he's pandering to people who really are not going to have his back, even electorally, in the long term.
Well, he does seem to be focused on domestic issues, even when making these calls on foreign policy. And we keep hearing about a two-state solution, a fantasy right now. But Douglas Murray, who will join me on the program tomorrow night, had this take on the two-state solution that is actually motivating Biden's decision-making.
He believes famously in a two-state solution, which is Minnesota and Michigan. And he's trying... he's trying to please a few 100,000 people in America. I don't think he's going to please anyone.
Emily, do you agree with that, that so much of what we're seeing from the Biden administration is motivated by holding on to those couple of crucial states that have large Muslim populations who are very, very energised about this particular issue?
I think that is one of the problems that the Biden administration is facing and one of their misjudgments in terms of policy. But I do think that the problem actually runs much deeper than that, because the policies that we've seen are being implemented by the people that Biden has hired. And the people that Biden has hired, including in the National Security Council, are people who have associations with Students for Justice in Palestine, have had associations with the Muslim Brotherhood, people who have had very, very weak policies of appeasement towards terrorist organizations, whether it's Hamas or the Islamic Republic of Iran itself. And this is the consistent trend that we have seen from this administration, a type of moral cowardice when it comes to dealing with not just the Israel-Hamas war, because that's only one element of the evil that we're facing today, but in terms of dealing with terrorist organizations as a whole across the entire world. We do need someone to be a moral authority on these issues. And frankly, I much prefer that it be the United States, for example, than say China or Russia or, God forbid, the Islamic Republic.
Yes. Well, the Australian government has been accused of supporting terrorism after voting for a United Nations resolution calling for the Security Council to admit Palestine as a member state. The decision has understandably outraged many here in Australia. We've had more than 70 years of bipartisanship before this, but what has the response been to this decision in Israel? Is there a sense of betrayal that a once staunch ally has voted with Israel's enemies?
I think that the statements of Penny Wong and the actions of Australia and the United Nations are very problematic. I do think there's a sense of betrayal on the ground here in Israel. Of course, Australia is not the only nation to sort of tiptoe around this issue and pay lip service to the Palestinian cause in perhaps ways that they really shouldn't be. I think that the fact we're even discussing a Palestinian state in the aftermath of October 7th, one of the biggest terrorist attacks we've ever seen, the highest number of Jews who have been killed since the Holocaust in one day, to respond to that by saying, oh, well, maybe we should talk about Palestinian statehood is insanity, especially when you're still dealing with a U.S. and European and many other countries designated terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip who is still in control after all the international pressure that's been placed on Israel to stop their actions, their defensive actions in a just and moral and legal war. It's outrageous. It's outrageous to be placing the responsibility on the state of Israel for this. The entire international community, including Australia, should be united against Hamas, and there should be no other discussion about a Palestinian state or negotiations or anything else until this Hamas terrorist organization is completely eliminated. They are unable to rule the Gaza Strip anymore, and all of the hostages they have taken are returned home. Instead, we hear endless chatter about the Palestinian cause and one state, two state, 20 states. I don't care about that. We don't care about that right now. What we care about is getting our hostages home. And that should be the priority for every single world leader as well. It's not even a political issue. You can support Palestinians and still support exactly what I said. In fact, you should. An actual pro-Palestinian policy is against Hamas. It's against Islamic Jihad. It's against the Islamic Republic. And it's actually supportive of the civilians who are not engaged with terrorism, which is not what we're seeing from the international community. We see the propping up of Hamas, including, unfortunately, by the U.S. administration. The only impact they're having by withholding some of these munitions that are more precise, by the way, that would actually prevent more civilian casualties, is that you're going to see more bloodshed as a result of that. This is a misguided policy from the U.S. administration, and it's a misguided approach from any of the nations, especially Western democratic nations who have historically been allies with Israel, like Australia, to use this war and this situation to somehow advance the issue of a Palestinian state, which is completely separate from what we see going on in the Gaza Strip right now.
Well said, Emily Schrader. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
That's it for me tonight. Newsnight is up next. I'll see you at 11 tomorrow. Good night.